Boss followed the secretary after work, then breaks down in tears at what he sees. Richard Thompson was completely lost. His company was going through its worst crisis in 20 years. Employees whispered in the halls about mass layoffs, and he couldn't understand how his secretary managed to keep that smile on her face every day, even earning a salary that barely covered her bills. That's why he decided to follow her that Thursday. When Amanda left the office at 6 in the evening, as she always did, Richard discreetly went down to the parking lot and got into his car. Something about that woman deeply intrigued him. How could someone be so positive amid so much chaos? He followed her bus for 15 minutes until she got off in a neighborhood he didn't even know existed in the city. What he saw next shattered his world. Amanda walked up to a group of people sitting on the sidewalk. She opened a cardboard box she was carrying and began handing out homemade sandwiches. Richard parked his car at a safe distance and watched in shock. His secretary, who earned barely 2 minimum wages, was feeding homeless people with her own food. "Good evening, Mr. George," she said to an elderly man. "I brought that sweet bread you like." "God bless you, child," the man replied with watery eyes. "You're an angel in our lives." Richard felt a lump in his throat. There he was, sitting in a car worth more than her house, complaining about problems she couldn't even imagine, while Amanda used the little she had to help those who had nothing. He wanted to get out of the car to approach her, but something held him back. Maybe it was shame, or maybe fear of ruining the pure moment he was witnessing. Amanda spoke to each person, asking about their lives and struggles. She wasn't just offering food. She was offering kindness, attention, dignity. A gray-haired woman held her hand and said, "You have no idea what it means to us to know someone remembers we exist." "You're my family," Amanda replied. "I'm the one who's grateful you let me be part of your lives." Richard couldn't hold back his tears. All these months working together, he had treated Amanda like just another employee. Sometimes, even with impatience when reports were late or when she made small mistakes. He never imagined that behind that secretary's desk was a woman with such a generous heart. When she finished distributing the food, Richard waited for her to leave before approaching. He wanted to understand those people better, to know how long Amanda had been doing this. He walked up to Mr. George. "Excuse me," he said, trying to sound casual. "Can I talk to you?" "Of course, young man. Is something wrong?" "It's about the woman who was just here. How long has she been coming?" "Amanda. Oh, about 3 years now. She started when she was still a student. Every single day, without fail, she shows up with food. On days she can't come, she sends someone in her place." Richard was stunned. 3 years, every day. While he complained about traffic driving to work in his air-conditioned car, she took 2 buses just to get here and feed people society had forgotten. "She's a special person," Mr. George continued. "Never met anyone with a heart so good. Some days she comes here looking a little down, but she always finds a way to smile for us, says we're the ones who brighten her day." Richard went home, completely changed. He couldn't sleep, thinking about everything he'd seen. The next day, he arrived at the office earlier than usual and watched Amanda work. She arrived promptly at 8 in the morning, as always, greeted everyone with her genuine smile, and sat at her desk to begin another day. During the morning, he noticed details he had never seen before. Amanda brought a packed lunch from home, never buying anything from the building's diner. She wore the same clothes in rotation, always impeccable but clearly bought from discount stores. Her shoes, though well kept, showed signs of heavy use, and yet she maintained that elegant, professional posture. Around 11 in the morning, she received a call that visibly worried her. Richard, pretending to work, listened to the conversation. "No, Mom, I haven't saved up all the money yet," she said quietly. "I know the medicine is expensive, but I'll have it by the end of the month." "Don't worry, I'll handle it." When she hung up, Richard noticed her eyes were watery. She took a deep breath, composed herself, and went back to work as if nothing had happened. Later, he learned from other employees' comments that Amanda's mother had diabetes and needed expensive medication that the community health clinic didn't always have available. Richard spent the rest of the day thinking about the situation. That woman was sacrificing herself to care for her sick mother and still found the strength to help others every day. Meanwhile, he spent on a single lunch what she used to buy food for an entire week. That afternoon, he decided to follow her again. This time not out of curiosity, but because he wanted to understand her world better. Amanda took the same route as the day before, but this time Richard noticed more details. She stopped at a small bakery and talked at length with the owner. Through the window, he could see she was negotiating something. "Frank, I know things are tough for everyone," she said, "but if you could give me the leftover bread from today, I promise I'll put it to good use. I can even help clean the bakery after hours." The baker, a middle-aged man with a flour-stained apron, sighed. "Amanda, you know I care about you, but it's not easy for anyone. I usually sell this bread at half price to a guy who runs a diner downtown." "I understand, Frank. Just for this week. My mother had to buy her medicine and I'm a little short." Richard saw the baker look at her with pity before agreeing to give her some bread that was close to expiring. Amanda thanked him so sincerely that the man was visibly moved. When she reached the spot where the homeless people gathered, Richard was prepared to witness another scene that would touch him. But this time, something different happened. There was less food than the day before and more people in need. "I'm sorry, everyone," she said sadly. "Today, this is all I could bring." "Don't worry, dear," said Deborah, an older woman in the group. "We'll share it among us. What matters is the kindness." Richard watched as they organized themselves so everyone could eat at least a little, even though they knew it wouldn't be enough. Amanda was visibly distressed that she couldn't help everyone properly. After the distribution, she sat on the curb next to George. "I'm worried," she confessed. "Every day more people need help, and I can't keep up. My mother needs more medicine, and I don't know how I'll manage." "You already do more than you should," the older man replied. "No one here expects you to solve all our problems. What you do for us is more than anyone else would." "But it's not enough," she said, tears in her eyes. "You all deserve so much more. A decent life, a home, food every day." Richard felt his chest tighten. He spent more on a single restaurant meal than she could gather to feed all those people. He decided that the next day he would do something to help, but he still didn't know how to approach the situation without making her uncomfortable. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The next morning, Richard arrived at the office with an idea. He would significantly increase Amanda's salary, creating a professional justification for it. Maybe a promotion to executive assistant with new responsibilities. And of course, better pay. But when he went to talk to the HR department, he discovered something that would complicate his plans. The company was truly in serious financial trouble. The accountant had just informed them they would need to cut costs drastically in the coming months, and that included possible layoffs. "Richard, I know it's hard, but we'll have to let go of at least 10 people, said Deborah, the HR manager. "And unfortunately, secretaries are at the top of the list for possible dismissal." Richard's heart sank. Amanda was on the list of potential layoffs precisely because her role was considered non-essential by the other directors. He looked at the list and saw her name there, marked with a red star. "We can't fire Amanda," he said quickly. "Richard, I understand you've grown used to her work, but we need to be practical. You can share a secretary with Brian from the sales department." "It's not about the work," Richard almost shouted, then caught himself. "Well, it is about the work. She's extremely competent and efficient. It would be a mistake to let her go." Deborah looked at him curiously. She had never seen Richard defend an employee so passionately. "Look, I can try to keep her for another month, but if the situation doesn't improve, there'll be no way around it." Richard left the meeting desperate. How could he tell Amanda she was about to lose her job just when she needed it most? And worse, how could he fire someone who used every penny of her salary to help others? For the rest of the week, he watched Amanda work with even more attention. She really was excellent at what she did. She managed his schedule perfectly, solved problems before he even knew they existed, and kept the office running flawlessly. The thought of losing her over financial issues infuriated him. On Friday, he decided to follow her again. This time, he had a plan. He would bring money to help her discreetly. maybe leaving an envelope on her desk, or finding a way to make an anonymous donation. But when he arrived at the place she always went, he witnessed a scene that completely changed his perspective on the situation. Amanda was there, as always, but this time she wasn't alone. 3 other people were helping distribute food. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Amanda," said an elegant woman in her 60s. "She's the one I told you about, the person who started all this." Richard hid behind a car to listen better. "Amanda taught me that we don't need a lot of money to make a difference," the woman continued. "When I first saw her here, 2 months ago, I was driving home from a doctor's appointment. I stopped to see what was happening and was amazed by her dedication." One of the other women helping chimed in. "I also met her by chance. I live in the building on the corner, and always saw her walking by with boxes. One day I went down to talk to her and learned the whole story. I couldn't just stand by after that." Amanda seemed moved by the presence of these people. "You have no idea how much this means," she said. "Alone, I could help a few people, but now we can assist many more. And this is just the beginning," said the First Lady. "I've already spoken to 3 more friends from my building. They want to help too." Richard stood watching the scene for over an hour. What had started as Amanda's individual effort was turning into something much bigger. People were organizing themselves, each contributing what they could. One brought clothes, another brought basic medicines, and the third had contacted a dentist who offered to treat some people for free. When he returned home that night, Richard had an idea that would change everything. If Amanda could inspire ordinary people to mobilize and help, maybe he could use his position in the company to create something even greater. But first, he needed to address the most urgent issue, saving her job. Over the weekend, he worked on a detailed plan. He would reorganize some roles within the company, create solid justifications to keep Amanda, and find ways to cut costs in other areas. He spent all of Saturday and Sunday reworking spreadsheets and adjusting budgets. On Monday, he arrived at the office determined to implement his plan. But before he could speak to Deborah from HR, he received a call that would change everything. "Richard, I need to speak with you urgently," said the company president. "I just came out of a meeting with the investors. The situation is worse than we thought." The meeting took place late in the afternoon. When Richard saw the expression on the president's face, he knew the news wouldn't be good. "They want us to cut 50% of the workforce," the president said bluntly, "and that includes several management positions. You may have to choose between keeping your role or keeping some of your subordinates." Richard felt his world collapse. If he lost his position, he wouldn't be able to protect Amanda. And if he kept his role, he'd have to fire innocent people, including her. "How much time do we have?" he asked. 2 weeks. They want the layoff list by the end of next month." That night, Richard couldn't focus on anything else. He went to the place where Amanda usually was and found her talking to Mrs. Margaret, one of the oldest homeless women in the group. "Mrs. Margaret, do you have any family who could help you?" Amanda asked with concern. "Sweetheart, my children live far away and don't even know I'm here. I'm ashamed to reach out to them. You can't keep sleeping on the streets in this cold. Tomorrow I'll try to get you a thicker blanket and see if I can find you a place to stay, at least on the coldest nights." Richard watched the conversation and had a revelation. While he was preoccupied with spreadsheets and executive meetings, Amanda was dealing with real, urgent human problems. Mrs. Margaret might not survive the winter sleeping outside, and here was his secretary, with her own financial struggles, trying to find a solution. He decided to step forward. This time he wouldn't just observe. "Excuse me," he said, stepping out of the shadows. Amanda turned, startled and paled when she recognized him. "Mr. Richard, what are you doing here?" For a few seconds he was speechless. How could he explain that he'd been following her? How could he justify his presence without sounding like an intruder? "I was driving by and saw you," he lied. "I was worried. It's dangerous for you to walk around here alone at night." Amanda looked at him skeptically, but Mrs. Margaret chimed in. "What a distinguished man. Is he your boyfriend, Amanda?" "No, Mrs. Margaret. He's my boss," she replied, still visibly nervous. "Your boss? How lucky you are to work." For someone who cares about you, the elderly woman said with a smile. Richard felt terrible about the lie, but he couldn't turn back now. Amanda, can I speak with you privately? They stepped a few feet away from the group. Amanda was clearly uncomfortable. Mr. Thompson, I can explain. This doesn't interfere with my work, I promise. I always come here after my shift, never during work hours. You don't need to explain yourself, he said gently. Actually, I'm impressed by what you do here. She looked at him in surprise. How long have you been doing this? He asked. About 3 years. It started when I was still in college and would pass by here to catch the bus. One day it was really cold and I saw your George shivering. I bought him a coffee and ended up staying to talk. I found out he used to be a math teacher, that he had a story, a family. I couldn't just walk past after that. And your family? Do they know? My mother knows. At first she was worried, thought it was dangerous, but when she saw how much it meant to me, she started supporting me. She even helps me make the sandwiches sometimes when she's feeling better. Richard was moved. It wasn't just generosity, it was genuine love for those people. Amanda, can I ask you a personal question? She nodded hesitantly. Why didn't you ever tell me about this? About your financial struggles? About your sick mother? Mr. Thompson, my personal problems shouldn't affect my work. I always try to handle my issues without bothering anyone. But we're a team. If you're going through difficulties, it affects me too. Amanda looked at him confused. She had never seen this more human side of her boss. Listen, I need to tell you something, Richard said, deciding to be honest. The company is going through a serious crisis. There will be layoffs in the coming weeks. Amanda's face paled. Am I on the list? She asked, her voice trembling. You were, but I won't let it happen. Mr. Thompson, you don't have to protect me. If the company is in crisis, I understand cuts need to be made. It's not about protecting you, he said. It's about doing the right thing. You're the most dedicated employee I've ever had. It would be foolish for the company to let you go. Amanda began to cry silently. I'm sorry, she said, wiping her tears. It's just, I've been so worried. With my mother's situation and everything. You don't have to apologize for having feelings, Richard said. In fact, I think I'm the one who should apologize for being such a distant boss, for not realizing the kind of extraordinary person I work with every day. Just then, Deborah approached them again. Sorry to interrupt, but have you seen Michael today? He didn't show up for dinner and I'm worried. Amanda immediately shifted her focus to the older woman's concern. Michael is that young man who got here about 2 weeks ago? Richard asked. Yes, he has a really bad cough. Amanda was trying to get him some medicine. Where does he usually stay during the day? Richard asked. Near the train station. He tries to earn some change helping people with their luggage. Without hesitation, Richard said, Let's go look for him. Amanda looked at him in surprise. Mr. Thompson, you don't have to. I want to help, he said firmly. If it's important to you, it's important to me. The three of them walked to the train station about 15 minutes away. They found Michael curled up under an awning, clearly sick and running a high fever. Michael, Amanda called, rushing to him. How are you feeling? Amanda, I don't feel well, he said weakly. I think it's gotten worse. Richard watched the scene and made a decision. Let's take him to the hospital, he said. I don't have money for the hospital, Michael murmured. I'll pay, Richard said without hesitation. Amanda looked at him in shock. In just a few minutes, her distant and seemingly insensitive boss was offering to pay for a homeless man's hospital bill, someone he didn't even know. Mr. Richard, this will cost a fortune. Amanda, some things are more important than money. They took Michael to the nearest emergency room. While waiting for him to be seen, Richard had time to talk more with Amanda about the work she did. How do you manage to do this every day and still keep up with your job performance, he asked. It's not hard when you love what you do, and these people give me the energy to keep going. They've taught me that financial troubles are temporary, but what we do for others lasts forever. Have you ever thought about expanding this? Maybe creating something bigger? I have, but I don't have the resources or the know-how. Besides, I'm afraid red tape and paperwork might take away from what really matters. Richard grew thoughtful. Maybe this was the answer to his company's problems. and a way to do something truly meaningful. By the time Michael was treated and given medication, it was past midnight. Richard offered Amanda a ride home. At first she refused, but she finally accepted when he insisted it would be dangerous for her to take the bus alone at that hour. On the way to her place, Richard got a closer look at the neighborhood where she lived. It was a modest but well-kept area. Small houses, narrow streets, a place where people knew and greeted each other. "It's here," she said, pointing to a small house with a blue gate. "Thank you so much for everything today. You really didn't have to do all this." "Amanda, can I make you a proposal?" She looked at him curiously. "What if we joined forces to turn what you do into something bigger, something that could help many more people?" "How do you mean?" "I don't have all the details worked out yet, but I think I could use some company contacts and resources to support your work. Maybe secure donations, partnerships with suppliers, that kind of thing." Amanda was silent for a few moments. "Mr. Richard, that's incredibly generous of you, but I don't want you to get into trouble because of me, especially if the company is in crisis. Leave that to me. Maybe this is exactly the solution we need." The next morning, Richard arrived at the office with a completely new plan. Instead of just trying to save jobs, he would create a new division, focused on corporate social responsibility. Amanda would be promoted to coordinate it, and they'd use it to attract socially conscious investors. But when he got to the office, Deborah from HR was waiting for him with even worse news. "Richard, we need to speed up the layoffs. The investors want the list by the end of this week." "Deborah, I have a different proposal. What if, instead of firing people, we created something that makes our company more attractive?" "What are you talking about?" Richard explained his idea for the social responsibility division. Deborah listened skeptically. "Richard, are you serious? The company is broke and you want to add more expenses." "It wouldn't be an expense, it would be an investment. Companies with strong social initiatives attract more investors these days." "I don't know, Richard. I'll have to present this to the company president, but I doubt he'll go for it." The rest of the morning dragged on. Richard couldn't focus on anything else. He kept watching Amanda work, knowing these might be her last days there. Around noon, she got a call that visibly shook her. "Mom, calm down. I'll leave work and come right away," he heard her say. When she hung up, her hands were trembling. "Is something wrong?" Richard asked. "My mother isn't feeling well. She's at the hospital. I need to go." "Go ahead. Don't worry about work. But I still have reports to finish. Amanda, go take care of your mother. Work can wait." She thanked him quickly and hurried out. Richard was concerned. He decided that after work he'd stop by the hospital to check on her. When he arrived at the hospital late that afternoon, he found Amanda in the waiting room, clearly distressed. "How is she?" he asked. "The doctors say she needs a procedure, but it's expensive. The health insurance doesn't cover everything." "How much is it?" $15,000, she said, her voice breaking. "I don't even have a tenth of that." Richard didn't hesitate. "I'll pay." "Mr. Thompson, I can't accept that. It's too much money." "Amanda, you saved Michael's life yesterday. Let me help save your mother's life today." "But how will I ever pay you back?" "You don't have to. Consider it an interest-free loan with no set deadline." Amanda began to cry with relief and gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to thank me. Just keep being the amazing person you are." Amanda's mother's procedure was performed the next day and went well. While she stayed at the hospital caring for her mother, Richard had a decisive meeting with the company president. "Richard, your idea is interesting, but we can't afford to innovate right now. We need to focus on survival." "Sir, what if I found a way to implement this with no upfront cost to the company, maybe even with financial returns?" "How?" Richard had spent the whole night researching and discovered several ways companies could receive tax incentives through social programs. There are several government programs that offer tax benefits for companies investing in social projects. Plus, I can secure partnerships with suppliers willing to donate materials in exchange for positive marketing. The president grew interested. "Do you have a specific project in mind?" "I do, and I already have the perfect person to coordinate it." Dear listener, If you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. When Amanda returned to work 3 days later, Richard called her in for a talk. "How's your mother?" "Much better, thank you. The doctors said she'll make a full recovery." "Mr. Thompson, about the money." "Amanda, forget the money for now. I have a proposal for you." He explained the idea for the new Social Responsibility Division and offered her the project coordinator role. "It's a significant promotion with a raise, and you'd be doing exactly what you already do, just with company resources." Amanda was stunned. "Mr. Thompson, is this real?" "Very real. The president approved it yesterday. But I don't have management experience. You have experience leading people, inspiring others to help, solving problems with limited resources. That's far more valuable than any business degree." Amanda accepted the offer, overwhelmed. Richard felt he was finally doing something that truly mattered, but implementing the project wouldn't be as simple as they hoped. At the first meeting with the other directors, Richard faced strong resistance. "Richard, this is crazy," said Brian from the sales department. "We're spending money we don't have to take care of homeless people." "They're not homeless, Brian. They're people in vulnerable situations, and we're not spending money. We're investing in our image and securing tax benefits. Even so, I don't see how this will save our company." The discussion lasted 2 hours. In the end, Richard secured approval for a 3-month pilot project, but with a very limited budget. Amanda, who now occupied a small office next to Richards, began working on the project with full dedication. She mapped out all the people she was already helping, identified their main needs, and created a plan to expand services in an organized way. The first challenge was finding a suitable location to centralize activities. The project envisioned a space where people could not only receive food, but also access basic services like haircuts, basic medical care, and even guidance on obtaining documents. "We need a place that's accessible and safe," Amanda explained. During a presentation to the board, and close to where these people already gather, "How much will this cost?" asked Brian, always focused on the numbers. "I'm negotiating with City Hall for the use of a public space. It's a warehouse that's been abandoned for 2 years. And who will renovate the warehouse?" "I've made contact with a few construction companies willing to do the work in exchange for tax breaks and positive publicity." Richard was impressed by Amanda's organizational skills. In just 2 weeks, she had built a network of partnerships he hadn't thought possible. But the first major obstacle arose when they tried to formalize the agreement with City Hall. The official in charge, a man named Walter, made it clear it wouldn't be easy. "Look, Ms. Amanda, the space is abandoned, but there are complex bureaucratic issues. You'll need several permits, approvals, that sort of thing." "What documents are required?" she asked. "There are many, and the process could take months." Richard, who had accompanied Amanda to the meeting, sensed the official was creating unnecessary hurdles. "Mr. Walter, this project will benefit underprivileged people in our city. Surely there's a way." "How to speed things up?" "Well, there is an expedited fee," Walter said with a sly smile. Richard understood the message. It was a veiled bribe attempt. "How much would that fee be?" he asked. $5,000 to fast-track all the paperwork." Richard was furious but kept his composure. Amanda, however, was outraged. "Mr. Walter, this is a social project. We don't have that kind of money." "Then you'll have to wait for the normal process. It could take up to a year." They left City Hall disheartened. Amanda was visibly frustrated. "Maybe this just isn't possible," she said in the car. "There are too many obstacles, and—" "Don't give up," Richard said. "We'll find another way." Over the weekend, Richard researched alternatives. He discovered NGOs with experience navigating such bureaucracy. On Monday, he presented a new idea to Amanda. "What if we partner with an NGO that already has a legal framework in place? They help with the paperwork, and we provide resources and management. Would that work?" "I'll look into it." Richard reached out to 3 different organizations. The second one, led by a woman named Margaret, showed immediate interest. "Do you really want to help, or is this just for show?" she asked bluntly. We really want to help, Richard replied. Our coordinator has been doing this work voluntarily for 3 years. Then you've come to the right place. We can provide all the legal structure and operational experience. You bring the resources and management. The meeting between Amanda and Margaret was highly productive. The two women connected instantly and began planning a joint effort far more ambitious than Richard had imagined. With the NGO's framework, we can serve not just the homeless but also struggling families in the neighborhood, Margaret explained. We could create professional training workshops, literacy classes, basic psychological counseling. Amanda was excited about the possibilities. What about the costs? Asked Richard. Most of it can be covered through partnerships and donations. Your company would mainly contribute coordination and some basic operational expenses. The project was taking on a much larger scale than initially planned. Richard grew concerned about the reaction from the other company directors. Amanda, I should warn you, this might face internal resistance. Some of our directors already think we're spending too much on corporate social responsibility. Do you think we should scale it back? No. I think we should prepare to defend our project thoroughly. At the next board presentation, Richard and Amanda polished the numbers and benefits for the company. They showed how much the company would save in taxes, the positive publicity it would generate, and how it could attract new clients and investors. Brian, as expected, raised several objections. This is getting too big. We started by talking about helping a handful of homeless people, and now you want to create a community center. Brian, the idea evolved because we saw we could make a much bigger impact, Richard replied, and the cost to the company remain low. What if it fails? What if this project becomes a problem? Every investment has risks, Amanda said, speaking up for the first time in a board meeting. But some things are worth the risk. The company president, who had stayed silent throughout the discussion, finally spoke. You have 2 weeks to show practical results. If you can prove this really works, we'll approve the expansion. It was an opportunity, but also enormous pressure. 2 weeks to prove that years of volunteer work could turn into a viable corporate project. Amanda and Richard worked tirelessly to organize an impressive demonstration. They fast-tracked partnerships, mobilized volunteers, and set up an event that would showcase exactly what they intended to do. The chosen location was a square near downtown, where they set up tents and organized various activities. There would be food distribution, but also free haircuts, basic medical care, document processing, and legal guidance. We need a strong turnout, Amanda said. If the directors see real demand, it'll be easier to convince them. What if too many people show up and we can't serve everyone properly? Then we prove we need more resources to expand. The day of the event dawned rainy, worrying everyone. But despite the light drizzle, people began arriving early. Richard was struck by the natural order that emerged. People knew each other, helped one another, and formed orderly lines without needing direction. George, the first homeless person Richard had met, was helping organize the line for medical care. Mr. Richard, he called out, so good to see you here helping our Amanda. Actually, George, she's the one helping me understand a lot of things. By 10 in the morning, the other company directors arrived to observe. Brian came with clear skepticism, looking for flaws. How many people have been served so far? He asked. 43, Amanda replied, checking a spreadsheet. And we still have 5 hours left. And how much is this costing? The only direct costs to the company were material transportation and snacks for volunteers. Everything else came through partnerships. Brian kept asking technical questions, trying to find flaws in the project. But even he couldn't deny that the event was going well. The most impactful moment happened when Mrs. Deborah, the elderly woman Richard had met on the first day he followed Amanda, approached the group of directors. "Are you Amanda's bosses?" she asked. "We are," replied the company president. "Then, I want to thank you. That girl saved my life more than once. And now, with you helping her, she can save even more lives." "Are you related to Amanda?" Brian asked. "No, son, I'm just an old woman who was lost in life. Amanda found me on the street, brought me food, treated me with kindness. Because of her, I found the courage to reach out to my children. Now I have a home and a family that's taken me back." Richard saw tears well up in the president's eyes. Brian, on the other hand, fell silent, clearly moved by the story. "How many people like you has Amanda helped?" the president asked. "Many, but she never bragged about it. She's humble, you know. Only thinks about helping others." When Mrs. Deborah walked away, the president called Richard aside for a private conversation. "Richard, was this project your idea?" "Actually, it was Amanda's. I just provided resources to expand what she was already doing." "And how long have you known about her work?" Richard decided to be honest. "I stumbled upon it by chance a few weeks ago. She was doing it voluntarily, never mentioned it at work." "And why did you decide to support it?" "Because I realized I was working with an extraordinary person and hadn't noticed, and because I thought our company could make a difference in many lives." The president was thoughtful for a few minutes. "Richard, I approve the expansion of the project, and I want you to know this makes me proud of our company." Richard felt immense relief, but the victory was short-lived. Brian approached with a serious expression. "Richard, can I talk to you?" They stepped away from the group. Brian looked worried. "Look, I know I criticized this project a lot, but I need to tell you something. I just got a call from the investors. They're questioning our spending on corporate social responsibility." Richard's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "They think we're losing focus on the company's core business. They want a meeting next week to discuss it. But the president approved it. The president can approve whatever he wants, but if the investors pull their funding, the company shuts down." Richard felt desperate. Just when he'd gotten internal approval, an even bigger external obstacle had appeared. "Brian, did you tell them about the tax benefits, the positive PR?" "I did, but they're not convinced. They think we should focus on cutting costs, not starting new projects." "What do you think we should do?" "Honestly, I think you should prepare to defend this project as if the company's life depended on it, because maybe it does." Richard returned to Amanda with a heavy heart. How could he tell her everything might fall apart just when it was working? The event ended very successfully. Over 100 people were helped, several partnerships were strengthened, and the local media coverage was overwhelmingly positive. But Richard couldn't celebrate knowing what was coming. That night he and Amanda met to review the day's results. "Mr. Richard, is something troubling you?" she asked, noticing his expression. "Amanda, I need to tell you about a complication that's come up." He explained the situation with the investors. Amanda listened quietly, and Richard watched her expression shift gradually from joy to concern. "Does this mean the project might end?" "It might, but we won't give up without a fight." "Mr. Thompson, perhaps it would be better for me to return to my previous position. I don't want the company to have problems because of me." "Amanda, you're not the cause of the problem. You're part of the solution. The problem is investors who only think about immediate profit. But if they pull their money out, many people will lose their jobs. And if we cancel the project, many people will lose the help they need." They spent hours discussing strategies for the meeting with the investors. They needed solid arguments, convincing numbers, and maybe even testimonials from people who had been helped. "What if we brought some of the people we've helped to speak directly to the investors?" Amanda suggested. "Do you think that would be appropriate?" "I think it would be real. They need to understand this isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about human lives." Richard thought the idea was risky, but maybe it was exactly the kind of different approach they needed. The following week, they prepared intensively for the meeting. Richard created a detailed presentation showing all the financial benefits of the project for the company. Amanda organized testimonials from those they'd helped and data on the social impact achieved. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning. On Wednesday night, Richard received a call that would change everything. "Richard, I need to tell you something," said Deborah from HR. "I just found out one of the main investors is talking about selling his stake in the company." "Because of the social project?" "Not just that, but it was the last straw. He thinks the company is losing focus and spending money unnecessarily. If he sells his stake, what happens? It could destabilize the whole group of investors. Others might follow his lead." Richard didn't sleep that night. He kept wondering if he'd made the right choice. Maybe he should have kept things as They were just saved Amanda's job and not tried to create something bigger. On the morning of the meeting, he arrived at the office and found Amanda organizing materials for the presentation. She looked calm and determined. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Nervous but at peace with our decision. Even if it doesn't work out, we tried to do the right thing. Amanda, if everything goes wrong today, I want you to know I don't regret a thing. Seeing your work has changed my life. Mr. Thompson, no matter what happens, I'm grateful for the opportunity. You gave me the chance to dream big." The meeting began at 9 in the morning. Present were 3 main investors, the company president Brian, Richard, and Amanda. The atmosphere was tense from the start. The most resistant investor, a man named Howard, got straight to the point. "Richard, we understand you wanted to do something nice, but we're concerned about the direction the company is taking. We didn't invest here to run a charity." "Howard, I understand your concern," Richard replied, "but I'd like you to see the numbers before making any decisions." Richard presented the financial analysis he had prepared. He showed the tax savings, marketing opportunities, and the potential to attract socially conscious new clients. "This is all very theoretical," Howard said. "In practice, you're spending money we don't have." "In practice," Amanda interjected, "we're investing in something that's already produced concrete results." She shared the testimonials and service data. She showed photos from the event, local media coverage, and messages of support they'd received. "All very touching," Howard said, "but this won't pay the company's bills." That's when Richard had an idea. "Howard, you mentioned you don't invest to run a charity. But what if I could show you this project can generate real profit for the company?" "How?" "We secured 5 major new clients just last week, all citing our corporate social responsibility as the deciding factor in their choice. This represents a 20% increase in revenue. Is that true?" asked another investor. "Completely verifiable," replied Richard, showing the contracts. The discussion lasted 3 hours. The investors asked technical questions, challenged projections, and analyzed every financial aspect of the project. In the end, Howard asked the decisive question. "Richard, if you had to choose between keeping this project and maintaining the company's financial stability, which would you choose?" Richard looked at Amanda, who nodded slightly. "Howard, we believe that's a false choice. The project is our financial stability. It's what sets us apart from the competition. It's what attracts clients and talent. It's what gives our company purpose. And if you're wrong, if we're wrong, we'll take responsibility, but we ask for the chance to prove we're right." Howard quickly whispered with the other investors. Richard and Amanda waited anxiously. "All right," Howard finally said, "you have 6 more months to prove this project delivers financial returns. If you succeed, we'll continue supporting it. If not, the project ends." Richard felt relief but knew the pressure would now be even greater. 6 months to turn a social project into measurable financial success. When they left the meeting, Amanda was euphoric. "We did it," she said. "We got a chance," Richard corrected. "Now the real work begins." In the following months, Richard and Amanda worked tirelessly to expand the project and prove its financial viability. They secured more partnerships, expanded services, and meticulously measured every outcome. The community center finally opened 3 months later at an event attended by local officials, business leaders, and hundreds of community members. Richard was moved to see his George cutting the ribbon alongside the mayor. "Who would have thought?" the elderly man said to Richard. "One day I was sleeping on the street. Today I'm opening a center to help others avoid what I went through." The project quickly yielded positive results. The company landed new contracts, won social responsibility awards, and, significantly, improved its market reputation. But the real test came 5 months later, when Howard called another meeting to review the outcomes. "Richard, I have to admit I was wrong," he said. "The numbers are impressive." "How so?" "Company revenue has grown 30% since the project began. You've attracted clients we'd never have won without this differentiator." Richard glanced at Amanda, who was beaming. "Does this mean—" "It means I want to invest even more in the project," Howard said. "In fact, I propose you expand to other cities." "Other cities?" Amanda asked, surprised. "Why?" "Not If it works here, it can work elsewhere too. Richard was tempted, but remembered the principles they'd set at the start, keeping everything local, community-focused. Howard, I appreciate your confidence, but our impact is greatest when we stay local. We can help other companies launch similar projects in their cities, but we don't want to become a national operation. Are you sure? The growth potential would be huge. I'm sure, Amanda said. What we do here only works because we know every person, every story, every specific need. If we grow too much, we lose that essence. Howard respected their decision, but was clearly impressed by their strategic maturity. 2 years later, the project had become a reference in the city. The community center served over 500 people a month, offered vocational courses, had a community garden, and even a small workshop where vulnerable individuals could learn trades and earn income. Richard, who had been promoted to general, director of the company, remained directly involved in the project. Amanda, now the general coordinator of corporate social responsibility, had a team of 12 people working with her. "Do you regret anything?" Richard asked Amanda one afternoon as they watched a group of children playing in the center's kids area. "I regret not telling you sooner about what I did. Maybe we could have started this earlier. And I regret taking so long to really get to know the people I work with." They quietly observed the center's activities. George now coordinated activities for the elderly. Deborah had become a volunteer and helped with adult literacy. Michael, the young man they took to the hospital that first night, was finishing a carpentry course and had already gotten a job. "You know what amazes me the most," Richard said. "What?" "How this hasn't just changed the lives of the people we serve, but also the employees at the company. Everyone wants to participate. Everyone feels proud to work here." "It's true. We get resumes from people who want to work at the company specifically because of the social project." Just then, a girl about 8 years old approached them. "Aunt Amanda," she called, "my mum wants to talk to you." The girl's mother was a young woman Richard didn't recognize. "Amanda, I wanted to thank you," the woman said. 6 months ago, I was unemployed and desperate. My daughter and I were almost on the streets. You gave me not just food and support, but also the chance to take the computer science course. Today I got a job and I'm already able to rent a tiny house for the 2 of us." "How wonderful to hear that," Amanda said, hugging the woman. "How's the new job?" "It's great. And you know the best part? My daughter is proud of me now. She sees I've managed to turn my life around." As the woman walked away, Richard felt that familiar sense of gratitude and purpose that had become part of his routine. "Richard," Amanda said, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "What did you feel before all this? What was your life like?" Richard thought for a moment. "I was empty. I had money, status, everything I thought mattered. But at the end of the day, when I got home, I felt completely without purpose. And now? Now I wake up every day knowing I'll do something that matters, that I'll work with people who care, that I can make a difference in someone's life." "You've saved so many lives, Richard." "Actually, Amanda, it was all of you who saved mine." They kept talking until late afternoon. As they prepared to leave, George approached them. "Leaving early today?" he asked. "Yes, George, why?" "Well, tomorrow a group of business students is coming to visit the center. They want to learn about the project and understand how it works." "That's great," Amanda said. "How many are coming?" "About 20. Their teacher said she wants to use our project as an example of how companies can have real social responsibility." Richard felt proud. The project had grown so much it was now being studied in universities. "George, would you like to join the presentation?" he asked. "Me, speak to college students? Why not? You have a unique perspective. You can share what your life was like before and how it is now. You think I can do it?" "I'm sure of it," Amanda said. "You are one of the best examples of how this project truly works." The next day, Richard watched his George speak to the college students. The elderly man, who 2 years earlier had been sleeping on the street, now eloquently explained how the community center worked and its real impact on people's lives. "You need to understand one thing," George said to the students. "Corporate social responsibility isn't about giving handouts. It's about giving opportunity. It's about giving dignity. It's about treating people as human beings, not as problems to be solved." A student raised her hand. George, what changed in your life since you came here? Everything changed, dear. But the biggest change wasn't having a place to sleep or food to eat. The biggest change was believing again that I had value as a person. Richard saw several students moved by his testimony. One of them asked, "How did you manage to create such a big project?" It was Richard who answered, "We didn't create anything. We just expanded something that already existed. Amanda had been doing this work for years alone with her own resources. We just gave her the structure to keep doing what she'd always done." And what was the secret to success? I think the secret was understanding that social responsibility isn't an expense. It's an investment in people, in community, in purpose. Amanda added, "And it was also important to keep everything real and close. We didn't try to save the world, we tried to improve our neighborhood." After the students' visit, Richard and Amanda had a meeting to plan the next month's activities. The center had become financially self-sustaining through partnerships and small income-generating projects. "Richard, can I tell you something that makes me happy?" Amanda said. "Of course." "Yesterday, my mother told me she's never seen so much joy in my eyes. She said that even when I helped people before, there was always sadness because I couldn't do more. Now she sees I'm truly fulfilled." "How is her health?" "Much better. The doctor said she could live many more years. And you know what she wants to do when she retires?" "What?" "Come volunteer here at the center." Richard smiled. Amanda's mother had been inspired by her daughter's example. "And you? How are things in your personal life?" Amanda asked. "Good, really good. I started dating one of the center's volunteers, a psychologist who comes here twice a week to help people." "That's wonderful. How did you meet?" "She saw me here one day and thought it was strange to see a suited-up executive helping serve soup." Richard laughed. "She came to talk to me and realized it wasn't just a marketing visit. And it worked out? It's working. She shares the same vision we do about helping people. It's easy to be with someone who shares your values." They kept working. Until the evening. As they were getting ready to leave, some exciting news arrived. Deborah from HR appeared at the center with a radiant expression. "Richard, Amanda, I have great news." "What is it?" they asked almost at the same time. "The company just received a buyout offer. A multinational corporation wants to acquire us specifically because of our social responsibility project." "What do you mean?" Richard asked. "They want to use our model as a basis to implement similar programs across all their subsidiaries. In the US, And is that good?" Amanda asked, concerned. "It's fantastic. They guaranteed they'll keep the whole team, expand the social project's budget, and they even want you two to coordinate the national implementation." Richard and Amanda exchanged glances. It was an incredible opportunity, but also a huge challenge. "How long do we have to decide?" Richard asked. "A week. They want an answer by Friday." That night, Richard and Amanda talked at length about the proposal. It was a chance to multiply the impact of their work, but it would also mean setting aside the local and personal touch they valued so much. "What do you think?" Richard asked. "I'm torn. On one hand, we could help so many more people. On the other, I'm afraid the project might lose its soul. What if we turned down the national expansion, but agreed to sell the company? That way, we'd have more resources to improve what we already do here." "That makes sense. We could keep our local focus, but with much better support." They decided to talk to some of the people served by the center before making a final decision. They wanted to hear from those who would truly be affected by the change. The next day, they organized a meeting with representatives from the community. George, Deborah, Michael, and several others came to share their thoughts. "Are you against selling the company?" George asked. "We're not against it," Amanda explained. "We're trying to decide whether we should also agree to expand the project to other cities." "And what's the problem with expanding?" Michael asked. "The problem is we might lose the closeness we have now," Richard replied. "Today, I know each of you by name. I know your stories. If the project grows too big, that could disappear." Deborah thought for a moment before speaking. "Do you know what first caught my attention about Amanda?" "What?" they asked. "It was the way she looked me in the eyes when she spoke to me. She didn't look at the ground or glance away. She looked straight into my eyes as if I was someone important. "And does that relate to our decision?" Amanda asked. "Yes, it does. If you can teach others to do the same, to look into the eyes of those who need help, then expanding is worth it. But if it just becomes numbers and statistics, it's better to stay as we are." The conversation went on for 2 hours. In the and the consensus was that they should agree to sell the company but propose a different model for the national expansion. "What if we created a training program?" Richard suggested. "Instead of directly managing centers in other cities, we teach other companies and organizations how to start their own projects. That way, we keep our local focus but multiply the impact," Amanda added. On Friday, Richard and Amanda presented their counteroffer to the buyers. They would agree to sell the company, but instead of overseeing a direct national expansion, they would create a training and consulting institute for corporate social responsibility. "That's an interesting idea," said the representative from the multinational corporation. "Would you train our other subsidiaries?" "We'd train you and any other interested company," Richard replied. "The idea is to share this knowledge, not keep it to ourselves." "How would it work?" 2 weeks of intensive training here at our center, where people would experience firsthand how the project operates, then 6 months of remote consulting to help with implementation. The proposal was accepted. The sale of the company was finalized a month later, and Richard and Amanda began working on creating the Training Institute. The first group of trainees arrived 3 months after that. They were executives from 5 different companies, coming from 4 states. For 2 weeks, they worked directly at the community center, serving meals, talking with those being helped and participating in activities. By the end of the first day, I already saw several of them in tears, Amanda told Richard. "I don't think they'd ever had direct contact with people in vulnerable situations before. How are they handling it?" "Better than we expected. There's an executive from New York who said he never imagined corporate social responsibility could be so human." "What do you mean?" "He thought it was just about signing checks to NGOs. He didn't realize it involved relationships, closeness, really getting to know people." Richard was pleased. This was exactly the transformation they had hoped to spark. At the end of the 2-week training, they held an evaluation meeting with the group. "What stood out to you the most?" Richard asked. An executive from a tech company replied, "What impressed me the most was realizing that social responsibility isn't a separate department in the company. It's a way of doing business. It's a culture." Another participant added, "And I also discovered you don't need a lot of money to start. You need willingness, dedication, and to see people as people." "Do you think you'll be able to implement something similar in your companies?" Amanda asked. "We can do it," said a third executive. "The question is whether we'll have the courage to face the internal resistance that will surely come up." "How do you plan to handle that resistance?" Richard asked. "The same way you did. By showing practical results, proving it works, insisting until we convince them." In the following months, Richard and Amanda monitored the implementation of the projects in the trainees' companies from a distance. 4 out of 5 managed to launch successful programs. The 5th gave up due to internal resistance, but the executive who had attended the training resigned and went to work for an NGO. "It's working," Amanda said 6 months after the first training. "The companies are really implementing solid projects. And the best part, each one adapted the model to their local reality," Richard added. "They're not copies of our project. They're their own creations inspired by what they learned here." The Training Institute grew gradually. In the second year, they worked with 12 groups of executives. In the third year, they were invited to give lectures at universities about corporate social responsibility. "Richard," Amanda said during the trip back from a lecture at a state university, "have you noticed we achieved this without leaving our region?" "What do you mean?" "People come to us. We don't need to spread ourselves across the country. The project kept its local essence, but its impact multiplied nationally." "That's true, and this way we've maintained quality and closeness." 5 years after the day Richard first followed Amanda, they sat in the community center, watching the afternoon activities. The place had grown and now occupied 3 buildings. It served over 1,000 people a month and had become a national reference in corporate social responsibility. "Amanda," Richard said, "can I ask you something I've always wanted?" "To ask? Of course." "That first day I followed you when you saw me in the car, did you suspect I was following you?" Amanda laughed. "Richard, of course I did. A fancy car parked on a street where only buses pass is pretty obvious." "So why didn't you say anything?" "Because I saw you crying. I thought maybe you were going through something and that seeing our work might help you in some way." "Did you know I was your boss?" "I did, that's why I was scared. I thought you might fire me for doing charity with money I was supposed to spend on myself." "And yet you kept going." "I did. Because I knew if I stopped helping people, out of fear of losing my job, I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror." Richard was moved by her answer. "You know what still amazes me about you to this day?" "What?" "Your courage. Courage to do what you thought was right even when no one was watching. Courage to defend the project when investors questioned it. Courage to dream big when you had few resources." "Richard, everyone has courage. The hard part is recognizing the moments when we need to use it." At that moment, a child came running up to them. "Uncle Richard, Aunt Amanda," called a boy about 7 years old. "My mom sent me to get you." They followed the boy to where his mother was. She was a young woman they knew well. She had arrived at the center 2 years earlier, pregnant and unemployed. Now she worked in the center's administration. "Amanda, Richard," she said emotionally, "I have some news to share." "What is it, Jennifer?" asked Amanda. "I just passed the college entrance exam for education. I'll start college next semester." "That's wonderful," exclaimed Richard. "Congratulations. And you know what I want to do when I graduate?" Jennifer continued. "What?" "I want to work right here, creating educational programs for the kids in the community. I want to give back for everything you've done for me and my son." Richard and Amanda exchanged emotional glances. It was the kind of story they heard regularly, but it never failed to move them deeply. "Jennifer," Amanda said, "you don't need to give anything back. What you've achieved is through your own effort. Amanda, without your support, I wouldn't have made it. When I first came here, I had no hope. You gave me back my confidence." As Jennifer walked away, Richard grew thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" Amanda asked. "I'm thinking that maybe this is the real measure of our project's success." "How so?" "It's not just about how many people we help or how much money we save in taxes. It's about how many people have regained hope. How many have discovered their potential. How many have gone from being helped to becoming leaders." That's true. Today, we have more former beneficiaries working as volunteers than current beneficiaries receiving help. And that's sustainable in a way I never imagined when we started. They kept talking until dusk. As they prepared to leave, George approached to say goodbye. "See you tomorrow, everyone," he said. "George," Richard called, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, son." "When you were on the streets, what did you miss the most?" "The sea." Older man thought for a moment. "You know, Richard, everyone assumes it was food or shelter, but it wasn't. What I missed most was someone saying my name." "What do you mean?" "On the streets, you become invisible. People walk past you like you don't exist. They don't talk to you, don't look at you, don't know your name. You stop being a person and just become a problem in the landscape." "And when did that change?" Amanda asked. "The first day you stopped to talk to me, you asked my name and remembered it the next day. At that moment, I became a person again." Richard felt a lump in his throat. There was a profound humanity in this work that he kept discovering years later. "George, do you regret anything?" "I regret taking so long to accept help. I was on the streets for 2 years, but I could have left much sooner if I hadn't been too proud to admit I needed support." "And what changed?" "Amanda didn't just offer help. She offered friendship. It's different accepting help from a friend." As George walked away, Richard had a realization. "Amanda, I think I finally understand the real secret of our project." "What?" "We don't treat people as beneficiaries. We treat them as friends, as family, as equals going through a tough time. Exactly. And that's why it works. People feel respected, not like they're receiving charity. And that's why they engage so much in improving their own lives, because they know we believe in them. That evening, Richard came home to find his girlfriend Sarah, the psychologist, making dinner. "How was your day?" she asked. "Thoughtful," he replied. "I was thinking about how our lives have changed in the past few years." "For the better?" "Absolutely. Before I had a comfortable life, but it felt empty. Now I have a life with purpose." "And you don't miss the financial stability you had before?" "Sarah, I actually have much more financial security now than I did back then. Not just because the company has grown, but because I've realized that real security comes from having purpose, from being useful, from being part of something bigger." "And your plans for the future?" "I want to keep doing exactly what I'm doing now. Working with Amanda, taking care of the center, training other companies. I've found my calling." "And personally?" Richard smiled. "Personally, I want to build a family with you, a family that shares the same values we've learned at the center." "Is that a disguised marriage proposal?" Sarah asked, laughing. "Maybe it is," Richard replied, laughing too. The next morning, Richard arrived at the center earlier than usual and found Amanda already working. "You're early today," she said. "I wanted to talk to you about an idea." "What idea?" "What if we created a specific program to teach social responsibility in schools for kids and teenagers?" "Explain more." "Imagine if we could make sure the next generation grows up with this mindset, taking care of each other, seeing businesses as agents of social change." "That would be revolutionary," Amanda said excitedly. "We could develop a dedicated curriculum, teaching materials, training for teachers." "Exactly. And we could use the center as a lab, bringing students in to see how it works in practice." "Richard, that reminds me of something. Yesterday, a teacher reached out wanting to bring her class here to learn about the project." "From which school?" "The high school I went to as a kid. The teacher said she wants to use our story as an example of how an ordinary person can make a difference." "And you agreed?" "I did. They're coming next week." Richard was thrilled at the prospect. It was another way to expand the impact of their work. "Amanda, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and realize this was all a dream." "Why?" "Because it's hard to believe that something as simple as following you here turned into such a big change in our lives, and in so many other people's lives." "Richard, it wasn't following me that changed everything. It was you deciding to act when you saw an injustice." "What do you mean?" "You could have seen my volunteer work and just been moved for a few days, but you decided to do something about it. That was the difference." "And you? Do you regret anything?" "I regret thinking I had to do everything alone for so long. It took me a while to realize that accepting help isn't a sign of weakness." "Is that why you hesitated when I offered the company's support?" "Yes. I was afraid you'd want to control everything, change the essence of the work." "And how did you get past that fear?" "By seeing that you genuinely wanted to understand and respect what was already here. You didn't come with ready-made solutions. You came to learn." During the week, they prepared to welcome the group of students. It would be the first time elementary school kids visited the center. "How do we explain to 10-year-olds what we do here?" Richard asked. "As simply as possible," Amanda replied. "We'll tell them we help people going through hard times. What if they ask why some people are homeless? We'll explain that sometimes people lose their jobs, get sick, or face situations they can't handle alone." The day of the visit was special. 25 kids from a public school arrived with 3 teachers. Richard and Amanda organized a special program with activities the children could participate in. "Children," said Amanda to the group, "do you know what it means to help someone?" Several little hands shot up. "It means giving food to those who are hungry," said one girl. "It means sharing toys with a friend," said a boy. "It means taking care of someone who's sad," said another child. "All those answers are right," said Richard. "And you do these things at school every day, don't you?" "We do," they replied in unison. "Then you already know how to practice social responsibility," said Amanda. "Here at the center, we do the same things you do at school, but with adults who need help. During the visit, the children participated in several activities. They helped organize donated clothes, took part in the community garden, and watched a performance by the choir made up of the center's visitors. The most touching moment was when George shared his story with the children. "Mr. George," asked one girl, "why were you homeless?" "Because I lost my job and couldn't pay for my home anymore," he answered simply. "And how did you get out of it?" "I met some very kind people who helped me, like Aunt Amanda and Uncle Richard." "And are you happy now?" "Very happy, because I realized I can help others too." One child raised their hand. "Mr. George, can kids help too?" "Of course you can. You can help your classmates at school, be kind to everyone, and take care of the environment. And when we grow up, can we work here too? If you want to, of course. In fact, it would be wonderful to have young people working here." When the children left, they left drawings and little notes for the center's visitors. Richard and Amanda were moved by the messages. "Aunt Amanda, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. Thank you for taking care of people," wrote a 9-year-old girl. "Uncle Richard, you're really cool for helping those in need. My dad said not all bosses are like that," wrote a 10-year-old boy. "I think we've got our future volunteers," Richard said with a laugh. "And future business leaders with a social conscience," Amanda added. A few days later, they received a letter from the school thanking them for the visit and sharing its impact on the children. "Since visiting the center, our students have become more aware of social issues. They've started their own project to collect school supplies for underprivileged children in the community. They're also more respectful toward each other and more eager to help classmates who struggle. The visit planted important seeds," wrote the school principal. "Richard," Amanda said after reading the letter, "I think we've found our next mission." "What mission?" "Creating a structured social education program for schools. Imagine if we could inspire thousands of children with this awareness. That would be amazing, but do we have the capacity for it? We can start small, with a few local schools, and grow gradually, just like we did with the center." Richard liked the idea. It was a way to expand their impact without losing their local roots. "Should we talk to some schools to see if they're interested?" he suggested. "Yes, but first, let's structure the proposal properly. We want this to be something that really works, not just a motivational talk." In the following weeks, they developed a pilot social education program for schools. It included visits to the center, hands-on activities at school, and community projects led by the students themselves. "Amanda," Richard said during a planning meeting, "do you realize how our work keeps evolving naturally?" "I do. And I think it's because we never force anything. We let opportunities come to us and embrace the ones that make sense." "That's true. We never intended to change the world, we just wanted to improve our community. And paradoxically, this is having a much greater impact than if we had tried to do something grand from the start." 6 months later, the educational program was being implemented in 5 schools in the region. Over 500 children had participated in activities related to social responsibility. One of the schools created a community garden. Another organized a book drive for libraries in underserved neighborhoods. A third developed a recycling project that involved the entire school community. "The children are much more engaged in social issues," reported a teacher. "And not just in theory. They want to do practical things, they want to see concrete results." Richard was impressed by the children's creativity. They found simple solutions to complex problems and organized themselves naturally to implement their ideas. "Amanda, have you ever thought that maybe children have a lot to teach us about social responsibility?" "How so?" "They don't have prejudices. They don't make excuses about why they can't help. They see a problem and want to solve it, plain and simple." "That's true. And they don't expect recognition either. They do it because they think it's the right thing to do." At that moment, they received a call that would bring a new opportunity for growth. "Richard, this is Deborah from the State University," said the voice on the line. "I'd like to invite you to a meeting." "About what?" "We'd like to propose a partnership to create an extension course on corporate social responsibility, based on your model." Richard looked at Amanda, who had overheard the conversation. "Can we schedule a meeting to discuss this further?" he replied. The meeting took place the following week. The university's proposal was ambitious to create a 6-month extension course for executives interested in implementing social responsibility programs in their companies. It would be different from the intensive training you already offer, explained the academic coordinator. It would be more theoretical, but with plenty of practical work too. And what would our role be? Asked Amanda. You'd be the practical coordinators. The university would provide the academic framework, and you'd bring the real-world experience. How many students would we have? About 20 in the first class. If it works, we can expand. Richard and Amanda asked for time to think. It was an opportunity to formalize the knowledge they'd developed, but it also meant more responsibilities. What do you think? Richard asked as they left the university. I think it could be good, but I have one condition. What? I want the students to spend at least 1 month working directly at the center. It can't be just theory. I completely agree. Practical experience is essential. They accepted the partnership with the university. The first course started 6 months later and was a great success. The students were executives from mid-sized and large companies interested in developing meaningful social programs. Professor Richard, said a student during a practical session at the center, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. What's the biggest change in your life since you started this work? Richard thought for a moment. I think the biggest change has been my definition of success. Before, success to me meant having money, status, professional recognition. Today, success is seeing someone regain their dignity, watching a child learn the importance of helping others, knowing I'm leaving the world a little better. And professionally, do you feel you've lost anything by no longer focusing solely on profit? On the contrary, professionally, I've never been better. The company has grown. The employees are more motivated and clients respect us more. Corporate social responsibility doesn't hurt business, it strengthens it. Another student added, Professor, at my company, many people think social responsibility is an unnecessary expense. How did you overcome that resistance? By showing results, replied Amanda, who had joined the conversation. Theoretical arguments won't get you far. You have to prove it works. And how do you prove it? Start small, measure everything. Document the impacts, both social and business outcomes. What if you face total resistance? Sometimes patience is key, said Richard. Not everyone is ready for change at the same pace. But if you stay consistent and deliver results, people eventually come around. The university course lasted 8 months. By the end, 17 of the 20 students had successfully implemented social responsibility programs in their companies. The other 3 transferred to firms that already had established social initiatives. Amanda, Richard said after the first class graduated, do you realize we're building a network? How so? All these executives who've gone through our training are connecting with each other. They're sharing experiences, forming partnerships, supporting one another. That's true. I got 3 emails this week from former students talking about projects they're collaborating on. And it's sustainable in a way I never imagined. We're no longer relying just on our own efforts. We've created a self-sustaining community. 3 years after the university course began, they had trained over 200 executives. The program had become a national benchmark for corporate social responsibility education. Richard, Amanda said one afternoon at the center, can I share something that makes me really happy? Of course. Yesterday, I got an email from a former student in New York. He implemented a social program at his company that's already helped over 2,000 people. That's wonderful. And you know what he wrote at the end of the email? What? Thank you for teaching me that social responsibility isn't something we do on top of our work. It's a different way of working. Richard was moved. That was exactly the message they'd been trying to convey. Amanda, I think we've reached an interesting point in our journey. How so? We've shown it's possible to build thriving businesses that also do good for society, and more importantly, we've taught others how to do it. It's true, and the best part is everyone adapts what they've learned to their own reality. We're not creating copies of our project. We're inspiring people to create their own. Just then, a special group arrived at the center. some of the first executives who had taken the intensive training 5 years earlier. They had come for a follow-up visit. Richard, Amanda, the group greeted them enthusiastically. "How wonderful to see you here," Amanda replied. "How are your projects going?" "Fantastic," said one executive. "My program now supports 500 families in Chicago. And mine in Atlanta serves 1,000 meals a day," added another. "But we're also here with an invitation," said a third. "What invitation?" Richard asked. "We want to organize a national gathering of socially responsible businesses, and we'd like you to host it." "What would that look like?" Amanda asked. 200 business leaders, 3 days of activities, sharing experiences, forming new partnerships. It would be held in your city, using the center as one of the visiting sites." Richard and Amanda exchanged glances. It was an incredible opportunity, but also a huge organizational challenge. "We'll need to think about it," Richard said. "It's a very interesting proposal, but we want to make sure we can organize something of quality." "Of course. You have a month to decide. If you accept, we'll start organizing immediately." That night, Richard and Amanda talked at length about the proposal. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think it could be really good. It would be a way to connect all the people who've gone through our training programs, and also to show a wider audience what's possible to achieve. My only concern is the logistics. Organizing an event for 200 people isn't simple." "True, but we can ask the participants themselves for help, create organizing committees, divide responsibilities, and use this as an opportunity to demonstrate in practice how cooperation between companies works." They decided to accept the challenge. The gathering was scheduled for 6 months later, enough time for proper planning. The event preparation was intense, but also incredibly rewarding. Richard and Amanda formed 10 organizing committees, each led by a former participant of their training programs. Responsibilities were divided: lodging, food, transportation, programming, communication, logistics. "It's amazing," Amanda said during a coordination meeting. "Everyone wants to help. No one is demanding anything. Everyone wants to contribute." "It's proof that we've built a real community," Richard replied. "This isn't just a professional network. These are people who share the same values." The gathering took place over a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in October. Business. Owners came from 12 different states, representing companies of all sizes and industries. The program included lectures, workshops, visits to local social projects, and a large fair for sharing experiences. But the most impactful moment was the group visit to the community center. 200 people is a lot for just one visit, Amanda said, concerned. "Let's split into groups of 20, Richard suggested. That way we keep things personal and allow for real conversation." The strategy worked. Each group spent an hour at the center, talking with regular visitors, participating in activities and learning about the different projects. George, now 72, made sure to personally welcome one of the groups. "George," asked a businesswoman, "from Boston, what's the main difference between this center and other social projects you've seen?" "It's simple, my dear. Here, people don't feel like charity cases. They feel like part of a family." "How so?" "No one here is treated as a beneficiary. We're all partners, collaborators, friends. Me, for example, I coordinate activities for seniors, help organize donations, and take part in important decisions. And does that make a difference?" "All the difference in the world. When you feel useful, when you know your opinion matters, you don't just want to receive help, you want to give back too." This conversation repeated in every group. The visitors were impressed not just by the center's structure, but especially by the active involvement of the people it served. On the final day of the gathering, a closing session was held where each participant could share their impressions and takeaways. "What struck me the most," said a business owner from Texas, "was realizing that social responsibility doesn't have to be complicated, it just has to be sincere." "For me," added an executive from Miami, "the big lesson was understanding that the secret isn't the size of the project, but the quality of the relationships with people." "I learned," said a third participant, "that financial sustainability and social impact can go hand in hand. You don't have to choose between profit and purpose. Richard and Amanda listened to dozens of similar testimonials. At the end, one of the organizers made a proposal. How about we turn this into an annual gathering, each year in a different city, organized by a different group? The proposal was unanimously approved. Richard and Amanda were moved to see they had helped create a movement that now had a life of its own. "Amanda," Richard said once all the visitors had left, "do you realize what we've accomplished? I don't think I fully grasp it yet. It's a lot to process. You know what amazes me the most?" "What?" "How all this started with something so simple, me following you around to understand why you were always so positive. Richard, it actually started long before that. It started the day I saw your George shivering from the cold and decided to buy him coffee. That's true. Small gestures, big transformations. And do you know the most important lesson I've learned all these years? What? That we don't need to be heroes to make a difference. We just need to be human. Humans who care about each other." 5 years after the national gathering, Richard and Amanda were once again sitting in the community center, watching the afternoon activities. The place had grown even more and was now managed by a team of 15 people, including several former beneficiaries who had become coordinators. "Richard," Amanda said, "can I ask you something I've always wanted to ask?" "Of course. Do you regret any of the decisions we've made over the years?" Richard thought for a long moment. "You know, Amanda, I think I only regret one thing." "What?" "Not having the courage to approach you and talk about this from the beginning. If I'd been more open, more human, maybe we could have started all this years earlier. But maybe it wasn't the right time. Maybe you needed to go through that period of emptiness to truly understand what was important." "Could be. And you? Do you regret anything?" "I regret thinking for so long that I had to do everything alone. It took me a while to realize that sharing responsibilities doesn't lessen the impact. It multiplies it." "That's true. Today we have hundreds of people doing what just the two of us did at the beginning, and doing it better than we did. Each person has brought new ideas, new perspectives, new solutions." Just then, a young woman approached them. It was Jennifer, who now worked as the education coordinator at the center, having graduated with a degree in education 2 years earlier. "Richard, Amanda," she said, "I have some news." "What is it?" they asked. "I just got accepted into a master's program in social education. I want to research community education models based on experiences like ours." "That's wonderful," Amanda exclaimed. "When do you start?" "Next semester. And do you know what I want to do with the research?" "What?" "I want to organize everything we've learned here so other communities can replicate the model. Not to copy it exactly, but to be inspired and create their own solutions." Richard was moved. It was the circle completing itself. People who had once needed help were now preparing to multiply the knowledge they'd gained. "Jennifer," he said, "do you realize how meaningful this is?" "How so?" "You started here as someone who needed support. Today, you're a leader who will train other leaders. It's proof that our model really works." "Richard, I'm just doing what you taught me. I'm giving back what I received, but in a way that multiplies the impact." When Jennifer walked away, Richard and Amanda sat in silence for a few minutes, absorbing the conversation. "Amanda," Richard finally said, "I think we've reached the point we always dreamed of." "What point?" "The point where our work is no longer needed." "How so?" "Look around. The center runs perfectly without our constant supervision. The former students are creating their own projects. The people we helped are becoming multipliers. We created something that has a life of its own." "That's true, but that doesn't mean our work is done." "It doesn't?" "No, it means we can now focus on new things. Maybe it's time to dream about the next step." "What next step?" "I don't know yet, but I'm sure it will come naturally, just like it always has." Richard smiled. Amanda was right. All these years they had never forced opportunities. They simply remained open and available, and the opportunities appeared. "You know what makes me proudest today?" he said. "What?" "It's not the size of what we've built. It's the quality of the relationships we've created. Every person who comes through here becomes part of a family, and that family keeps growing." "Richard, can I confess something to you?" Of course, sometimes I'm afraid all this is too big for me, that I'm not the right person to be at the center of it all. Amanda, you are exactly the right person, precisely because you have that humility, that awareness that it's not about you but about the good we can do together. Thank you for saying that. Sometimes I need to hear it. And I need to thank you every day for teaching me that. True success is making a difference in others' lives. As they talked, the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the community center. It was a scene that repeated every day, but never lost its magic for Richard and Amanda. "Richard," Amanda said, "no matter what the future brings, I want you to know these have been the best years of my life. The best of mine, too, and I'm sure many more equally special years are still to come." Why? Because we've learned the secret. When you do what you love with people you love to help people you care about, every day is special. They watched the center's activities until nightfall. Children playing, adults talking, elders sharing stories, young people learning new trades. It was a living, vibrant community, full of hope. "Amanda," Richard said as they prepared to leave, "thank you." "Thank you for what?" "For saving me without even knowing I needed to be saved." "Richard, honestly, you're the one who saved me." "How so?" "You gave me the chance to dream big, to turn an individual action into a collective movement, to multiply the impact of what I always wanted to do. So we saved each other. We did. And we saved many others too. And they saved others who saved others." "That's it," Amanda said, smiling. "That's how the world changes. One person at a time, one gesture at a time, one dream at a time." When they left the center that night, Richard and Amanda walked together to her bus stop, as they had done every night for years. It was a simple ritual, but it symbolized the partnership and friendship they had built. "See you tomorrow," she said before boarding the bus. "See you tomorrow," he replied. "And thank you for another extraordinary day." Richard went home knowing he would wake up the next day with the same enthusiasm as always. Not because all problems were solved, there would always be people needing help, but because he had found his purpose in life. That night, before sleeping, he reflected on the whole journey. It had all started with a simple curiosity. Why was his secretary always so positive? The answer had transformed not only his life, but the lives of hundreds of others. And tomorrow would be another day to keep making a difference, one person at a time. End of story. Now, tell us what you thought of the story and where you're reading from. If you have something to share with us, leave your sincere words in the comments. Do you think Richard made the right decision by following Amanda? We'd love to hear your opinion. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other exciting stories.